Why are we single? And what are we hoping for this year? I think we need to delve into that, look at it from a, societal point of view, from our culture, from dating, and also about, any growth points that we can learn together.
So when we're talking about relationships, all you're trying to do on the first date, I think, is just having fun. If you make this preconceived list before you even go and meet this person, like you've already kind of condemned a person before even knowing them. So, and that's not what you're trying to do on the first date. A first date, you're basically you're just trying to have fun, because you can't progress in a relationship if you actually find the person boring and unattractive. There's no point in continuing, otherwise it becomes stagnated. So having very, very broad idea of like what you want is a good idea. Like, for example, if you're Catholic and you want to raise your family Catholic, like that's a hugely important thing. But if you're having like sort of specifics before even going through the door of where you're dating, that's just going to be very it's going to be very trying. I think also dating is a skill that you need to keep doing, and if you stop doing it, then you lose that skill. So the first date is just about having fun. And I'd say that dating goes through sort of 3 phases. This is the way I've rationalized it in my head. It's learning if you can have fun together, getting to know each other's values and what they stand for, and then it's emotional intimacy. A lot of relationships these days sort of get these things backwards. But if you've made this list that's so strict, you're completely jumping the gun on the first phase. You're jumping into values and assuming someone's values, assuming who they are before even actually getting to know them. And ultimately, sometimes it's hard to have fun with people. So you might be actually finding it quite easy. If you go on a date, you can kind of it will be quite clear if you can have fun with them or not. So I think having a pre-recorded, pre-made list is a big one. Is kind of a bit difficult. It's very secular, I think.
It's very limiting.
Yeah, it's very limiting. What's your reasoning behind that?
I think a lot of it is self-protection. I think a lot of it is from, do you know the attachment styles?
Yes.
Like avoidant, anxious, secure. And I think a lot of it is because you're trying to preempt not getting hurt. So you almost have a list to be like, okay, well, if, we agree on everything from faith, healthcare, education, like all these kind of things, if I know that up front, I feel safer to enter into this, and I feel safer to actually become emotionally intimate with someone. And I think it does come from a place of that kind of safety and also self-reliance. Like, I'm not saying it's a good thing. So I think it would be interesting to, see, like, can we throw the checklist out this year? But I like what you said about values and vision and being able to really align on that. But I do agree that first date needs to feel more just like presence with another person than a job interview or like an interrogation. And I think sometimes it can feel like that, or sometimes it doesn't even get to that point. But I think as well that women find physical attraction is something that grows. It's not something that's automatically there all the time. It can be like an ember and you can fan the fire. But while I think men are more visual, so it's like you kind of see someone, you're like, okay, I'm attracted to her. And you find it easier to just go for it and see if you're aligned. While I think women often do really operate from a place of needing to feel safe. And I think that's why women tend to have this checklist.
Interesting. Okay, so you're kind of like, you're a bit, I'm not sure about the checklist anymore. You seem to have just gone completely U-turned on that.
Oh, have I? Yeah, as in saying that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, you basically just said, oh, well, I think it actually might come from a place of insecurity. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a level of insecurity and then there's a level of kind of expectation and vision for your life. So, if you have aspirations to have a country life, like to have land and to have lots of kids and animals, and then you date someone who is such a city slicker and would never, want that for their own future, is that really that compatible? Like, I think there is a good element of being able to see, this is what I feel would be a nice vision for life.
I think the whole thing of like whether you're a city person or a rural person, I think the more important question is to ask why each of you are that. and have that conversation before being like, oh, they clearly love being in the city, I'm not going to date that person. Whereas, like, you know, they might be in the city, but there might be a real true reason why they're in there, and that might be a value that actually aligns rather than a value that kind of separates you. So for example, like yourself, I imagine you're in the city because your whole family's basically here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm just like, that's a true value. It's not because you're like, oh, you know, I love how grey everything is and how lack of wildlife there is, you know. That's that's not the reason you're here.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't think that's
so that's about not judging something so superficially, like actually understanding the root of it. And are you saying then that not enough men and women are giving each other a chance because it's like that judgment just comes about quite quickly, or that labeling of like, well, we're probably not compatible?
Yeah, well, it's a wider issue of sort of like hyper individualism when it comes to dating. It's always kind of like, what can I get out of this, rather than like, how can I give to this? And dating on its whole is kind of, I think, become quite superficial. The sort of culture behind it is kind of either aggressive, like all in, or, I mean, I'm like this a little bit sometimes. I've tried not to be it, but it's kind of all in or complete withdrawal.
No, but it's interesting because I do think isolation and solitude are actually a temptation, because I feel like I go through phases where I feel really positive about dating. And like you said, it's like dating is almost like a muscle. It's just good to get to know people, to communicate, to be able to meet people where they're at and to see them. But then sometimes if I go through a phase where I'm not dating, it's also very easy for me to not think about it, to not action it, to not be proactive or receptive, I should say, because I'm not on any dating apps or anything like that, but I want to be receptive to being asked, for example. But I do think there's this element of, that hyper individualism where your life is just not easy, but it's how it is. And it's sometimes hard to get out of that comfort.
I find this whole thing of like, I don't want to ruin my peace, I want to disturb my peace, being a big sort of theme amongst men.
Is that like monk mode?
Kinda, yeah. Like, it's funny because like religious orders are kind of getting a bit of a resurgence at the moment.
Yes, I saw that. And silent retreats, like all this very much just like going into that contemplative mode.
Which is funny because historically the reason why that's happened is often it's correlated with civilizational failure.
Well, I do think we are at a civilizational moment now. We're having like this digital AI revolution and things. And I do feel like now, and also we're seeing like there's, you know, fertility rates are low, people are getting married much later, less and less people are getting married, more people are living alone, more people are working from home. The elements of community, belonging, membership of your neighborhood, of your nation, is really disintegrating. So I do feel like we are in a kind of civilizational decline at the moment, but I like to see it in a hopeful way. I think a lot of people are waking up, you know. I'm a millennial, I think you're Gen Z.
I'm a weird in between.
Oh, okay. So like, I think a lot of millennials now have become very disenchanted with so much messaging that they were given in their late teens and early 20s. You know, it was really the Sex and the City kind of era and the girl boss era. And I think a lot of people have realized, A, they were really lied to, B, they fell for stuff without questioning, and C, they really did become very, like you said, individualistic. And this element of sacrificial love, of service to others, was traded in for self-love, self-care, and that protecting my peace. So I'd love to hear more of that from the male perspective.
It's sort of the sort of tsunamis of feminism, sort of this sort of cultural shift, like these waves and waves of feminism have kind of made it as if, like, you know, any kind of traditional approaching, like, consent is a massive thing. So like it seems like you have to get consent to even approach someone. Like I remember when I was maybe 21 or 22, we went to this pub, and I thought the girl behind the bar was attractive, but I don't know why I thought the approach should be that I should leave my number and hope that maybe I might get lucky and she might contact me if I was very nice. And then we got in the car afterwards, and the guy, the dad guy, said to me, just like, he turned around to me and was like, did you left your number? And he was just like, and I was like, yeah. I said, and I think that's how you're meant to do it. So, you don't disturb their workspace, try and be as respectful as you can. And you haven't really got permission. I think was actually one of the phrases, you haven't got permission to ask for that contact detail. And he turned around to me and he was just like, that's how the kids are doing it these days. And I just went, I think generally, yeah, if you want to try and do it, otherwise you probably get in trouble.
So interesting you said that, because I think that women now are so frustrated by that passivity. But obviously I know that it's been a product of this, the Me Too culture of really wanting to respect women and to not, harass women, for example. But it's almost has gone so far that now the dynamic's quite odd. Like I recently saw a video of a woman proposing to her husband on Instagram that's gone viral, and it was so uncomfortable to watch just because it was such a weird dynamic seeing her get down on one knee, for example. And then when I was helping out with a speed dating event, I asked the girls there, and they were in their 20s, and they said they had gone the whole year without being asked out in person. And these were really lovely, attractive, pretty girls. And I was like, wow, what has the culture come to?
Well, it's also that I think there is a massive thing of fear of failure amongst guys as well. As in, like, I don't know, I can't say where this has come from, but I know that a lot of guys think that, like, the whole thing, she's out of my league kind of thing, where they wouldn't even bother asking. And I don't know where that's come from. There is a whole thing where guys are just like, it's not worth it. Like, you kind of get, some guys get belittled for it, and they don't want to have that rejection. And a lot of people are just sort of looking for some sort of intimacy, and they just don't want to have to fail and get that embarrassment. And we've sort of so coddled feelings and so coddled people's emotions that we try and, like, we become into sort of a maternalistic, protective sort of state where people don't want to feel bad at any point.
They don't want to experience discomfort.
Yeah, and asking out someone is really uncomfortable, and rejection is kind of uncomfortable. I remember I went to this talk years ago by this guy, Father Toby Lees, big up Father Toby Lees, and he was talking and preaching about rejection therapy, going around and asking for ludicrous things and just accepting that rejection is a part of life. And I believe that's even more prominent than when Father Toby said it years ago. And like just being okay with rejection. You know what? I think you get rejected when it comes to dating. I think people get rejected far less than they think they would.
Yeah.
And but I think the thing that men find difficult as well, even in the Catholic world, is the sort of domineering sides of, again, going back to the whole sort of feminist thing. And I'll try and explain this as well as I can, is that there's, like, in every single way, you're taught you're equal, in every single sense. And that is just not true. You're equal in worth and dignity, but you have different strengths. And so when the situation between you and a woman is unclear, I think like confusion often is more difficult to approach. And so when you don't know what your role is, you don't have a purpose, you don't know what you're meant to be doing. For a long time, it would just be a situation of where you'd go to your local pub, you'd speak to someone, you'd connect, and then that would be it. And you could go and approach. And then it would usually be like, it would be fun, you might get turned down nicely or something, but these days is that it just doesn't really happen that way, and I don't really know why. I'm sort of...
No, it's interesting. I remember listening to this really successful entrepreneur, and he was saying that he wants his kids' first jobs to be in sales or in, like, mission work, like literally going out, trying to sell an idea, a concept, a product to people at mass, because precisely he wanted them to experience rejection and to know that they can survive it and that it's fine and that a win is still a win and it's still great. And ultimately it only takes one, right? We only want to find our spouse. But I do think that there is a whole problem of people not taking chances. And I think the whole dynamic with the sexes and us not really knowing our roles is that you have a lot of amazing women who are single, and they're like, well, how much of this should I take into my own hands now? You know, should I be asking my friends out? Shall I be saying I'm interested? Shall I be dropping the hanky to such an obvious degree So what do you think about that? Because I think there are a lot of women out there who are frustrated because they're like, I don't know how much more I can hint without literally saying, I would love you to ask me out. But they don't want to say that because it is true that equal in worth and dignity is completely true. But I do feel that rejection, a woman experiencing rejection is actually harder than a man experiencing rejection. And I know that probably some people are going to come for me for that, but I do believe that because there's, we are softer and we are more insecure and we're easier to hurt emotionally. So I do feel like that kind of dynamic is actually more on the man's role, and for him to be able to have this kind of self-confidence, this ability to bounce back is something that is very inherently masculine.
I don't think women should be going around dropping loads of hints and I don't know what the hanky thing's about.
So it was a Victorian practice. So back in those days, women would drop their hanky when they were interested in a man, and then a man nearby in proximity would pick it up, and then they would speak and get to know each other and court and then get married sometimes.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So there's this whole notion of dropping the hanky. So, because you have got these women who have not been on dates for years, right? And they are attractive, beautiful, nice, fun women, but they, for some reason, just find themselves not being asked out. So what's the solution for them? Like, what can they do? Because that's the difficulty, is we now go into that premise of, okay, do we just trust God and we're like passive, just trusting God? Or do we have to be proactive and putting ourselves out there more? And I know that with women, I think it's really important that we kind of put ourselves in the position where we can be found by men. So, going to young adult events, or if you are older, networking, going to places where you're going to meet new people. But yeah, how are women meant to do it from your opinion? Or they just meant to sit pretty and wait? Because like I said, you've got these women who've been waiting a really long time, and I can't explain why.
I think it depends where you are. I think it massively depends where, like literally physically where you go. If you're on a dating app, you've got probably some very busy guys on there, but I also think there's some guys that are terrified of asking people out on the dating app.
Oh wait, are they on the dating app because they're afraid of asking people out in real life? Because I feel like the dating app presents this kind of neutral ground of, hey, I know you're definitely single, so it's like a little bit of a safer bet, and it's behind a screen. Like, I feel like dating apps have actually meant men are less likely to ask women out in real life.
I mean, I don't know that, but from what I've understand from people that have used dating apps, it's like that's a big part. I mean, it's not always the case. Sometimes it is literally just some people are just too busy, or they live remotely, and they're trying to find someone, and maybe they're Catholic or a Christian, and they can't find anyone in their little village, and so they broaden their horizon a little bit. But
then I know people who are London city Catholics, and they've still not met their person, and they've been here for 10 years.
Then again, it's like if you go to a different place, you get approached differently. If you're in a bar, you're likely to get approached by a certain type of guy. If you're at like a networking event, you might meet someone and exchange numbers later on. I think it's about where you are and what you're doing physically. Mm-hmm. If you're just going to church, sitting there hoping that someone will come up and speak to you, I don't think that's going to happen. If you're just in a church hall hoping that maybe that one good-looking guy that you kind of find attractive are going to go and ask you out, you've narrowed your scope from the however million people are in this country to one person. It's not just about making yourself look approachable, it's about where you go physically, because that you'll find a certain type of thing. Like I was talking to some friends of mine, John and Therese, and we were talking about dating, and then John and Therese were literally just like, we met and we got along because we were both doing the same thing we loved, which was mission. Mm-hmm. So they were just working a mission. They met through that. John asked her out, and then they began dating. Like, it's about where you put yourself, and eventually you will probably meet someone. I think the guys that are the problem of the men that are really struggling, that won't actually ever ask women out, are actually probably just stuck at home. They're the ones that are really terrified of asking women out are probably stuck at home. Going back to the whole thing, my advice to a woman who wants to be asked out is that you just go out and find something social, and eventually if you speak to people, meet people, a guy will eventually find you, will eventually ask you out. And it's much easier when you've started a conversation.
It's funny because I've been watching a few of these Hallmark movies, and like when you watch these rom-coms, it's so, you know, the guy always says the right thing, he always does a really nice gesture. And I do think that we have, as a society, just overcomplicated dating completely, and we're just not taking the chance. I'll say two things. So one is I completely agree about just like the physical positioning, like going to the right events. And I remember once seeing a guy who I thought was cute at this like book launch, and I saw him go to the bar, and I was like, I'm just going to go to the bar at the same time just so that I know he sees me. And then like I was just there, made sure I was in his line of sight, and then lo and behold, he came up and was like, hey, are you enjoying the book launch? I was like, yeah, like so casual. But it was very much like it was an intentional, let me just place myself here, but it still allowed him to approach. And I do think that's the secret of the kind of women's receptivity and like putting yourselves out there in a way that's still very much within that feminine kind of etiquette. And then secondly, you're talking about AI. I think AI is causing a lot of issues, especially for women as well, because you're talking about these men in their digital monasteries, but there are a lot of women out there who are using AI as therapy or as self-improvement tools, self-development. So, you know, they're saying to AI, hey, you know, I want to get married next year. What can I do? And AI is telling them X, Y, and Z. No, genuinely, this is real. Or, you know, they're saying, look, I haven't done that, but you know what? Why not? Try it. All for like a good social anthropological perspective, of course. But so you have AI, and AI is often talking to you, or maybe you'll say, hey, I was in this relationship and it ended badly. What do you think I did? And almost every time AI will agree with you. You're never wrong. They will find fault in the other person. I think it's really changing people's perceptions of themselves, of their own kind of egos and their own abilities to see another person and to meet them in the middle. And I think that's causing a lot of issues. And then earlier today, Aaron sent me a photo of an advert for like, what's it called? Like AI boyfriends and girlfriends, or AI Sims.
Yeah, literally companions.
Yeah, it was like, oh, if you don't want to do dating apps, get a dating sim. And it's insane. And you told me it's a £1 billion industry.
It's almost exclusively AI girlfriend industry is worth £2.8 billion.
Wow.
Which is
that's really scary. Do you think it's a hangover from the pornography industry, obviously? Because like this digital way of having your so-called needs met online in a way that doesn't cost you anything, right? Maybe it costs you some money, but it doesn't cost you don't need to be that disciplined man who is, you know, providing or protecting or anything like that. And then there's this added element now where you can also get the emotional side. So supposedly, right? It's like the emotional kind of, I don't know if this AI girlfriend texts you or she gives you voice notes or all these kind of things. It's very odd. It's like a long distance relationship. I guess your brain could think you're in like a long distance relationship.
Well, to be honest, I think it's kind of the end game of Western society as a whole. Not to get, you know, super philosophical, but ultimately the family has been absolutely torn apart. The traditional family as an institution is basically gone outside of religious circles. And so when you take away that, it's sort of the family is the first institution in which all civilizations are built. Like they're there before schools, they're there before governments. And if you take that away, you have no continuity. A family is there to build values and pass them down. And so when you don't have that, when you don't have that community that comes naturally from family, you create this sort of emotional vacuum, I think. And like I think a big telling thing is that like AI chatbots aren't as big in a thing in countries that actually have really strong family. So like Hungary has a really strong family, Slovakia has really strong family, Poland has really strong families. Like they don't have this same thing of like transactions that are paying for these chat bot girlfriends, because, you know, you've got community, you've got people around, you've got people encouraging you, you're living in the real world. Whereas in the very Western parts of it, America, Britain, you've got these men that have been left behind by this steam train of progressiveness. And, you know, again, going back to feminism came in to create this progressive sort of utopia, but it replaced the family. No, it didn't replace the family. It tore the family apart with no actual model of what should be in its place. And
well, it's because the state wanted to intervene. So the state wanted to raise your children. They wanted to, you know, work the mother and the father and, you know, double the workforce and everything like this. And it is interesting because the family, of course, is the stitch of our social fabric. Like that's really like the undertone of what societies are built on. And I think that, you know, in nations where intergenerational, multi-generational households are a thing, you know, people aren't moving out and then living on their own and all these kinds of things, you just don't have the time to be messing around on AI. You're actually in the real world. You are being active. Even if you are single, you're being a very active aunt or uncle or son, and you're constantly doing things. You are obviously working, you have a job, but you're also helping with the house, you're doing gardening, and all these things that have become so far removed from our everyday life now in a lot of the West.
Yeah, I mean, most of the people I know who have really good family bonds and are very much community-based don't really use ChatGPT. The people that do tend to be more self-sufficient or self-isolated in some way, shape or form tend to use ChatGPT more, or any kind of chat model.
Yeah, I think there's also like a hunger to learn though. I think there's sometimes, and that's a good thing, but then sometimes it can distract you from just being in the real world and serving your neighbour, which I think a lot of us don't do anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Communities have kind of been, especially in London. I did this whole thing where I wrote maybe 5 articles about the differences between cities and villages. And it was really funny because during it I discovered that your brain is only really capable of being empathetic towards 150 people, which is basically roughly the size of a small village. And in cities, there's this weird disconnect because you're essentially anonymous. There's so many people where you don't mean anything in a crowd, where you don't know anyone. The idea of knowing your neighbor in a city is basically impossible. And so the only community you make are these small little artificial ones, not artificial ones, but these kind of like same value communities spread from all over the place, but you're not actually locally based. That's the closest thing to sort of a community you can get in a city and an urban area. And so that's like, it's cognitive overload of social interaction. And I think going back to the whole chatbot thing is, I think those two are kind of connected.
I think you end up almost in an echo chamber because you're in these echo chambers in the city, right? So you find people who are exactly like-minded with your values, with your faith, with whatever system that you're, you know, assigning yourself to. And then with ChatGPT or AI, you're also just talking to these bots who also are kind of there to keep you hooked. So they're going to agree with you and everything like that. While before, you know, you'd be in a village and you'd have people with different opinions, but because you had to just get along, you know, like that's your baker, that's your butcher, you're not going to cancel them. You're not just going to be like, well, you didn't vote for the same prime minister as me, so I'm not talking to you. You know, like you have to find a way to have dialogue. And I do think that that's also seeped into a lot of the culture in terms of friendships, in terms of work, and in terms of relationships, because we have no patience for people that we see as outside of that kind of, you know, diagram. And I think that brings us back full circle to the checklist, because it's like we're in this, we're living in this time where we seemingly only can get along with people who exactly agree with us. And it's really difficult to grow with people, to learn from other people, to be less, you know, stringent in your views. And of course, there are some values which you should not compromise on. Like if you know, believe in God and you know, want to raise a good Christian family, that is a value that you shouldn't compromise on. But there are some things where you can be a little bit more open to listening and to actually listening and not just going into full explainer or debate mode, which I think social media has really made us all kind of become like these little social justice warriors for whatever it is that we feel really strongly about.
That is really interesting about the whole city and how dating in a city is so different from dating in a rural space. Because it's also just like you are kind of overwhelmed by choice. So you kind of just, there's so many people around you. You kind of just, you can kind of just make more of a list. Whereas if you're in a small village, you kind of just, it's what you got. There's like people somehow manage to survive and continue to create families for generations, for thousands of years, being in tiny little communities. Yet somehow we in cities can't like even find a family by the time we're in our 40s. So what is that? Is that really an actual issue, or is it just like we've kind of made up an issue in our heads?
Yeah, this brings me on to like this modern dating kind of marketplace where it is like people have all this criteria, people have this, the paradox of choice. So, there's this whole study about jam, like you go into a supermarket, you want to buy strawberry jam, but you're overwhelmed because there's 11 different brands. And even when you pick one up, you feel this displeasure inside because you're like, well, the other 10 might have been better. I don't know if I chose the right one. And that's just, consumer choice that is, so difficult for us, let alone finding a partner. And I do think it has just become we've just stopped seeing people as, made in the image and likeness of God, like unrepeatable. And it is humbling. Like I'm thinking about it for myself as well. Like, okay, if you had to say a 3-word or 3 kind of point list of what you're really looking for from love this year, what would they be?
Christian, British.
What do you mean by British?
In the society we're in, where it seems that British heritage and Britishness is under attack and it's kind of slowly dying. It's not necessarily, it's like, I want to date someone who's English, I want to date someone who's Scottish or something. No, it's not like necessarily like a British ethnicity thing. It's more of someone who just gets it, who gets Britishness.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I, obviously, as someone of mixed heritage, like I completely think multi-ethnicities is good. It's great. Like, you see that in the Bible, but I think it's multiculturalism, which is really problematic because you come to Britain and you want to embrace that British culture. And I think we are erasing that heritage, and then it becomes very difficult for your children to kind of know who they are and to not have those values and that kind of social structure. So I do agree with that.
But being British is important to me. And so that would be my number 2. And then number 3 is probably, an adventurous, maybe leaning into sort of the playful thing you were saying as well. That's kind of fun. Someone who's fun, someone who's not strict, I don't know.
Yeah, doesn't take themselves too seriously.
That's it, yeah.
I like that. So it's, for you, it's faith, shared culture, and playfulness, sense of adventure. I think actually everything you're talking about is so much of an antidote to loneliness and to isolation, because I think a lot of people, they become disenchanted when they feel displaced, when they don't feel like they belong. And I think that sense of belonging, in your faith, in your culture, is really important just for human flourishing in general. So that's interesting. I think my 3 would be number 1, definitely like puts God first, because I think if I were to meet, a God-fearing man, like I would never need to worry about the things that secular women may need to worry about. Is he going to cheat? Is he going to stray? Is he going to want to divorce me? Like, it's always going to be rightly ordered, I think, if the man is very much putting God and Jesus at the center. And then secondly, I think, going back to the sense of safety, it's this reliability, this element of knowing that I'm safe with this man. So this whole like women want protectors and providers, it's true. It's very much inherently biological to us. We become very vulnerable when we are pregnant. We become vulnerable when we're looking after little ones. And we want to know that we have that kind of rock of a person. So that really for me, and also a sense of family. Like I actually really would love to bring back that multi-generational kind of household. Like my dream would be to have like land and have annexes for all of the parents so that they can get old like nearby and you can care for them, but you can still have your own family life, but you also have that shared community. I think that's really beautiful. So I would ideally be looking for someone who would be open to that, because I think there's something really beautiful in that. And also you've got like built-in childcare and you have built-in support, and you never need to worry because you have, everyone's lifting each other up in those kinds of instances. And then I would say play, this element of play, because I think that life can be really hard and it can throw you a lot of curveballs. And if you don't have someone who's able to sometimes just dance with you in the kitchen or sing ridiculously on a road trip or just be a bit silly and play video games with the kids or just play video games together. Like if you take yourself too seriously and you lose this element of play, like I really love this concept of childlikeness, not childishness, but childlikeness. And I think it's something that a lot of us lose the kind of older we get, because we think we've got to take things seriously and we're an adult now. But there's something in that which is so vibrant and you just want to be around it because it's joyful, even in sorrows and struggles and hardships. So those would be my three, which is interesting because I definitely had like a scroll before. But yeah. But it's all very values based, isn't it? And it's very that vision. You've
gone down to three. Are you okay with that three?
Do you not think that three is good?
That's growth, mate. Yeah. Well done. It was like 50 before.
It's 50, maybe like 12. But yeah, so I think to bring this conversation to land, it's interesting to really look at, why do you think you're single? What is it that's maybe holding you back? That is personal, that's situational, that's, circumstance. And there are things that you can do to put yourself in the position to actually meet new people, to meet the right kind of people. So Aaron, are you feeling hopeful about finding love in 2026?
I am hopeful. My plan is just to keep going as I am, and then keep socializing. And if I meet someone and it works, then great. If it doesn't, life goes on.
I'm feeling pretty hopeful about this year because last year I kind of called it like my fallow year, where I was just recouping. Maybe I was having my kind of feminine monk mode moment where I just wanted to get back to like a homeostasis of feeling good, like not dating from a place of I will only feel good when I am in a relationship or when I'm married or when I'm engaged, because I think that cost me quite a lot when I was dating from that place. And it was a place of not feeling worthy in myself and feeling like I hadn't leveled up to, that kind of maiden, mother, matriarch kind of status. Like I really felt like I was really behind. And I felt also like I was being very off-brand, because it's like, it's very Christian, it's very traditional, it's very conservative to build a family. And I put myself under so much pressure that it burned me out, like spiritually, emotionally, physically. So last year, although like I was very blessed to go on some really lovely dates, and this was all not being online. I wasn't online at all last year. So they were all real life people who either asked me or I was set up or anything like that. But I did it very lightly because I knew that I had some kind of inner work to do, some healing, some just coming at dating from a much healthier posture. So I am feeling really hopeful because I feel genuinely okay with being single. And I think that's actually a really strong place to start. And my life is just full of joy and it's full. It doesn't feel like there's this void and I need this man to fill it. It feels like I have something I want to share with someone. So I'm feeling excited about this upcoming year.
That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, that is
hopeful. Bit vulnerable there. Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on and sharing your insight. And thank you for watching. And I hope that you all feel really hopeful for this new year as well. And as always, God bless. Bye.